Hey there, today we're taking a look at the AC/DC song Little Lover. And this is the third track on the original High Voltage album and track number 8 on the international release. And the star of the show is Malcolm Young's rhythm guitar parts. So we're going to dive right in. We're tuned down a little bit, as is the case with a lot of these old AC/DC songs. And I tuned, I think specifically to 430. So bring everything down 10 cents. So the intro and verse parts just revolve around a G major to E minor chord. And there's lots of little variations, but it's gonna sound something like this. Okay, so if you have a little trouble with the syncopation there, what I might recommend that you do is just play like a stripped down version of the riff to really feel where those, downbeats and syncopations on the offbeat lie. Basically, you really just want to feel where the 1 is and where the and of 2 is, because you're letting the notes ring through beat 3, if I'm not mistaken. So if I'm just tapping my foot here, you might want to just start like this. So what's actually going on here? Well, we're going to be playing the low G note here on the 3rd fret. And we're just alternating that with the open D and G strings, obviously what's giving us a G major tonality there. So I'm sure that Malcolm is playing all these parts with his pick. But for the sake of playing these parts cleanly, I'm going to be using hybrid picking. So I'm actually going to use my middle and ring fingers just to pluck those inner strings. So from there, we move on to that E minor chord. So we're going to be playing the open low E. And again, I am pretty sure that Malcolm is playing the higher dyads here on the 3rd fret, high E and B strings like this. But I'm not Malcolm, and I can't make those notes sound as good and as clean and as chunky as he does. So instead, I'm going to be playing those same 2 notes, which really are just outlining a kind of top of your G chord there. I'm going to be playing those up on the 7th position, 7th and 8th fret on the G and B string. So from there, we're just going to slide that same shape up and down 2 frets, or a whole step. Back and forth. Okay, again, you can play that down here. All right, so depending on the guitar that you have, it might feel easier or better slipping and sliding down here on the neck or up here. But regardless, what we're outlining is a E minor tonality with a little bit of that sultry, slidey bit. So that's really the gist of the verse part. Again, we're just going between the G and E minor. And of course, Malcolm puts his own kind of signature licks in there. Sometimes it sounds like he's playing, getting in that high D note in there for some of those parts. And I know there's at least one part in, I believe, the second verse where there's a little just that little open D to hammer on the E note there to that open G string. All right, so put a little flavor into it. Obviously, it's kind of a simple, open, sprawling, kind of a groovy, syncopated part there. So really, really fun to play, and like most AC/DC riffs, simple on paper, but a little bit trickier in practice. All right, and so coming into the pre-chorus, we're gonna hear Angus come in for the very first time. So this whole song, we've just been hearing Malcolm play the rhythm guitar parts there through your left side speaker. And I think what's happening is Angus is kind of coming in on these kind of whole note chord stabs here. So we're going to start off with the A. And I think Malcolm underneath it is playing that A blues shuffle, going from that 5 to that 6. We know the blues shuffle. And then the only other chord that we're going to move to in the pre-chorus is the C. Same thing. I think Angus just lets it rip. And I think Malcolm is chugging away at it. And then we move into the chorus. All right, so now we're coming into the chorus. Basically, it's a walk down the E minor pentatonic with a little E minor chord stab there. So the way that I like to play it, I think the most fun way to play it is to kind of slide up to the E note in the 7th position, down to that D, B note, G note, and that pattern, that kind of shape there, should also look familiar from Baby Please Don't Go. All right, so could also play this down at the open position. All right, my guess is one brother is playing one version and the other the next. So the chord stab here, on first blush, you might think it's the Jimi Hendrix chord, the E7 sharp 9. I think you could play that, but to my ear, it sounds better, and by better I mean I think it sounds closer to the record, if you actually omit that major third, that G note. My ear is not really hearing that. So if we just take your finger off that G sharp note, you just get an outline of an E minor 7. So that's the low E, E octave on the 7th fret. We're going to skip the D string, just mute that. We're going to hit that flat 7 or the D note on the G string, and then we're going to hit that high G note on the B string. And you'll notice these top 2 notes are the same 2 notes that we've been sliding around with in the verse. Okay, you could also play that chord down here in the open position. So that would just be probably not even playing that B note. You probably could just go Yeah, I think that sounds a little bit better. So it's just the E note on the D string, and then our little diab there, muting the G string. Alright, so dealer's choice there, and then the tag riff at the end of the chorus is, again, just taken from the E minor pentatonic. We're going to play the E note to the open D, and then we're going to skip down to the G note. Okay? So, simple as that. Again, you're probably going to want to play that in this open position, because it might be a little bit tricky to go. Probably not even worth the slide there. So, again. And that's the gist of the chorus. So now we're going to take a look at the rhythm harmony underneath the guitar solo. So the rhythm part under the guitar solo is pretty simple. We're really just walking up the neck. So it sounds like on one guitar, it's just playing like the low G note, maybe the octave. And then I think there's an underlying Angus part that's playing that blues shuffle. So really, we're just going to be playing 2 bars of G walking up to A, 2 bars of A walking up to B, 2 bars of B into C, and then half a bar of D and half a bar of D sharp. Okay, again, we're just building that tension, building that solo all the way back up to the E tonality, which of course brings us back to the chorus. So something like this. All right, so somewhere along the way, I think maybe starting on the C, it kind of drops that blues shuffle idea and just goes straight into chugging power chords. So that is the underlying part of the solo, and the lead part really just follows the pentatonic all the way up the neck as well, just following each of those chords. Alrighty, so the guitar solo starts out with a fun, somewhat challenging tremolo legato part, and again, the licks and the solo are going to move up the neck just like the rhythm parts do. So here on the G, the first 2 bars of the solo, we're just going to play off of the minor pentatonic box here. So we're going to do this hammer-on pull-off here on the 3rd and 6th fret of the B string, and you're going to hit that legato lick there, that hammer-on and pull-off, just those 2 notes for almost 2 bars. So that looks like this. So if that's a bit of a stretch for you, take it nice and slow, nice and easy. You really want to make sure that you get a solid hammer on and pull off. So each note comes through clean. And really your pull off is kind of like its own pluck. It's like its own guitar pick. So when you do a pull off, especially when you're doing so darn many of them, you really want to think about pulling the finger slightly down and away off the string. Not just straight up off the string, but down to create the vibration for the next note. So we're going to play for about 1.5 bars, and then ideally, without using your right hand, 2 beats, moving up half a step, and then moving up into that 5th position as the harmony cranks up to the A. So we're going to play that hammer on and pull off for, I think, the first bar. And then as we get into the second bar of that A, we're going to play an A minor pentatonic lick. Right, so that can be a little bit tricky, going right from that tremolo part right into that bend. But that's the gist of the lick. You're basically bending up to the octave, that A, then catching that high A on the E string, doing a pull off, 8, 7, 5, to the D note, back up to that E note, and then this little bend, release, bend idea to cap it off. Of course, Angus plays it so fast, you're really not sure what specifically each of those notes are, but definitely want to make sure that you hit this pull off and end with this bend up to that E note. Okay? So then obviously the rhythm moves up into the B part. And here we're going to announce the change in tonality with this double stop bend. Very characteristic of Angus to announce a chord change with, you know, some of these fun double stop bends. I use fun in quotations because I am still working on getting those types of double stop bends just right in tune. But the idea here is you're going to grab the G and the B strings here at the 9th fret, give them a bend up and back down, maybe a half step, and you're definitely going to want to make sure that you hit those strings twice. And then those single note lines are going to come out of the B minor pentatonic box. So that first kind of part of that lick is just a hammer on, up the scale, and then we're pivoting off the E and B strings on that 7th fret. All right, really fun lick to play there. And then the second part. All right, lots of pull-offs and bouncing between strings there. Really the main things to hit there are this bend, almost hinting at that minor to major third here on the D note, to the root, obviously, and then hitting that flat 7 a few times, back to the root. All right, so that B section there is pretty fun, and then we move up to the C. So the C lick is going to be a little bit more simple. All right, so we're going to be sliding up to this E note here on the G string. Of course, that's the major third of the C. And then we're going to catch that high C. So we're just outlining that C major tonality. Again, another bend up to the root. So the quirky part here, which we're going to see in the next lick, is we're taking that natural 6, bending it up to the flat 7, back down to the 5th. I'm sorry, we're actually going to land on the flat 3rd. All right, so that just kind of adds a little bit of flavor, a little bit of color into our otherwise standard pentatonic box. So for the last lick of the solo, we're moving up to the 12th position. And again, we're kind of maybe blending a little bit of D and E minor pentatonic. And again, we're going to hit that same double stop, bend in vibrato part here on the 12th fret, G and B strings. And then we're going to, again, play with that natural 6 to flat 7 bend right here on the 14th fret, kind of hinting at that C sharp to D. And then we're going to cap off the solo with a bend on the 15th fret up to that high E. All right. And so there's a little extra kind of space, kind of rest in there. So it's easy to rush that last lick there. So take your time, and that is the gist of the main solo. So in the very last chorus, we're going to play that tag riff through 2 full times, which is going to be 8 times through that lick, and then you're ending on that E note. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And from there, the band cuts out, and you might reasonably assume that the song is over. But after a few more seconds of silence, Malcolm and the band come in with a little looser interpretation of that verse guitar part, and Malcolm and Angus kind of trade some cool guitar parts. So we're going to take a look at those. All right, so let's take a look at the coda, this ending jam, where Malcolm plays some cool variations on the main riff. So when the band comes in, the drums and the bass on the 1, Malcolm is actually going to come in on the and with that G note. And obviously you're going to have to kind of play along, listen to the recording to get all of this syncopation, all this playing on the off beats just right. But basically for this first time through with the G chord, he's really just playing off of the, again, open D and G strings and mixing in some of those fretted notes on the second fret. Right? So if you just kind of get comfortable with your middle finger on the low G, your ring finger on that D note on the B string, and then just kind of get used to playing off of those E and A notes there on those inner strings. That's really all Malcolm is playing around with. So on that first time through, pretty simple there. Really just playing off those 2 or 3 notes, kind of using that A as an accent. And sometimes he's kind of bending that A maybe up into a B flat, which of course would give us that minor third rub. And then when we come down to the E minor, he's just playing that same dyad that we know from the verse parts, just kind of by themselves. Then for the second bar of that E minor, he's coming back down to that open position. And again, kind of hinting around that E minor pentatonic scale there. I think we're going to do an open D to an open low E, and then accent that actual octave there. And then there's some sort of bend, I think, there on that G note. Open E, back to that E octave. All right, so the next time through the riff, again, Malcolm just kind of plays a little. Again, just playing off those 2 notes there. And then he's got a little slide up to the B note on the G string. And then we're going to play 2 pull-offs off that A note back to the G note. Okay, again, just kind of using that kind of A note up to that B flat. Again, just kind of using that A to that kind of B flat bend as kind of a way to kind of add a little country feel. And when we come down to the E minor, and we're really just kind of playing off that open D back to the octave, pivoting off that low G. And again, that lick kind of goes something like this. So the last thing that you really hear as a track is fading out, again, is just kind of that simple riff on the G. And then like right after beat 2 on the second bar, there's this cool slide from the G up to the A and back down. walking back down to that E minor. So that is the gist of Malcolm's rhythm part there at the end jam. Again, just kind of putting some extra notes, some countrified flair in there to really just kind of make this an extra cool cherry on top of the song. So from here, we're going to look at Angus's lead licks that he plays over those parts. Alrighty, and wrapping up with the outro solo. So it's basically all in E minor pentatonic. We're starting off up here at the 17th fret, and we're going to be bending that high E string up to a B note, targeting the 5th of E. All right, so that's just a bend going down to that minor third and back up. And then we're going to come up to the 19th fret B string for a little half step bend down to the 17th fret, and there we're just playing essentially taking the 9th of the E, bending it up to the minor third and back down to the root. A little pre-bend there. And then the next lick is a little bit major sounding because we're going to bend that 9th up to a major third. So it starts off with a hit on that high B note. So again, you can kind of hear, Angus is kind of playing around with that minor to major tonality, which obviously is a blues technique. And for these next licks, we're moving down into our home bass, 12th position, E minor pentatonic. And we're starting with a simple hammer-on from the D to E note up to the G note that we're going to play twice. So that's kind of like the call, and now we're waiting for the answer. So that's a cool one. So Angus is playing the flat 5 into the 5, jumping up to the G note there, and then capping off the lick on the flat 7. Very bluesy there. And then when we hear that E minor tonality in Malcolm's part, we're going to play, again, a lick that is kind of moving in between that natural 6 and the flat 7. So again, it's another kind of basic call and response type lick. We're going to be playing the D note to the C sharp, landing on the B, which is of course the 5th of the scale. And then he's kind of hinting at playing the exact same lick, only instead of with a pull-off, he's doing a pre-bend from the C sharp down and then landing on the B. Another little call and response lick here, again, right in the 12th position. It's that same same D to E hammer on up to hitting that G note. And then we're going to play that 14th fret, bending up to the B note. And that's, again, kind of our call. And what's our response? Well, we're basically going right back down. So a couple hits on that G note, and then we're going from that E back down to the D note or that flat 7. And that's just a really neat, little bluesy, kind of sad, melancholy feel to cap off that lick. All right, so the last couple licks that you really just barely hear as the track is fading out. Again, we're going to be playing a little half-step bend, kind of hinting at here, the 9 to the minor 3rd on the E, that F sharp to that G note, kind of a pre-bend. And I think he's hitting that C sharp, kind of a decidedly major pentatonic sound. And then speaking of major pentatonic, I think the very last lick that you hear is kind of up here, technically out of what you might consider the C sharp minor pentatonic or the E major pentatonic shape, either one there. But you're going to grab that high E note, bend that F sharp on the G string up to a G sharp, and of course that gives us kind of an E major tonality. All right, so that does it for the outro guitar parts of Little Lover. A really cool tune, pretty simple. We're just cranking on G major, E minor there. Some fun lead parts, some fun rhythm parts. That is Little Lover. And stick around for the next track that we're going to take a look at, which is called Stick Around. We'll see you there.